Hello and welcome to another Fluid Review training tutorial. This tutorial is going to cover the basics of creating a basic spreadsheet type of report in Fluid Review. So to start, you're going to want to navigate to the Analyze Results and then select the Report Builder. Now when you come in here for the first time before any reports have been created, this page is going to appear relatively blank. So what you see listed here are a bunch of reports that have already been created in this specific site. If you have none, this area is just going to be blank. In the top, you'll find the toolbar for creating reports. And when you click on the drop down, you'll see there's three main types. So you can create a basic report, which is a spreadsheet type, a graphical report. Now this is looking at aggregate information, so it pulls it into PDF. So this provides you graphs and charts on numbers of answers. And then a summary, which pulls it into a doc table. I'm going to start by going to the basics, and I'm going to select an Excel report. So you can choose CSV or Microsoft Excel. If you do use Excel suites and you know you have applicants who are using special characters in their answers, I do recommend Excel, as special characters don't always pull in properly to a CSV format. And the second you make your selection, you'll see this pop up. And the first thing to do is to create a title for your report. And I'm just going to call this Submission Basic Report. And you can also add a description to provide some more information on what this report is. Know that all the reports created are available to any administrator in the site. The next option you have is to select the source for your report. So you can choose between a submission source, a reviewer source, a user source, recommendations, or rankings. The two most common types of sources used are submissions, which grants you access to all of the application data, as well as the overall average and cumulative rankings, or a ranking report, which grants you access to basic submission data, so answers to form questions by the applicant, as well as allows you to access average cumulative scores and any answers by reviewers in their forms. The other options in between, reviewers grants you access to basic reviewer information. Users is really there in case you want to export the users you have in this system and put them into another database, so it's just very basic user information. And recommendations is available should you be having recommenders in your site. So this will allow you to access any form answers that your recommenders have given. Now I'm going to do a submission source here, and once I press save, it's going to go in and bring me to building out the official report. Once you're in here, you'll see the name and description at the top, so you can update those. And then you'll see a column section. So the columns here will end up being the columns that you have in your report. So you can click on the drop down, and this will grant you access to choosing the information you want to have in your report. So right now you'll see there's some defaults, and whenever you do create a new report, we do have some defaults selected. And you can come in and you'll see anything that's blue and checked off is selected, and anything that's white and hasn't been checked off isn't, but you can always add it in simply by checking it off. And I'm just going to unselect or deselect some of these. Other key information, you have some applicant information such as their name, their ID, and email. And then you have access to any form that's been completed in the site. So right now I'm just going to come into our application form and I'm going to select just some basic answers that have been given. Now, as mentioned, this is a submission source report, so it's granting me access to the basic of the submission data. So you'll see I have access to rankings, but just the overall average and cumulative. I don't have access to the reviewing forms. So I can come in here and you can have cumulative and average on a form basis. So if you want to look at the answers for initial review and your judging form. So in this site, I have 2 reviewing forms. And you can also select to look at the overall, so those 2 combined. Other options available are also tasks, and this is where you can check for task completion. So if you're wondering whether or not the application form or resumes or anything else have been completed, you can do that. And if you do have uploads, you'll see here there's options for URL to resource. So this, because it's an uploaded task, will actually give you a URL that can be clicked on to then open up to that uploaded file. And I'll show you what that looks like. Now once you press done, you'll see the columns have updated with all the changes I've made. If things are not quite in the order that you want them, know that you can always select an option and you can simply click and drag it where you want. And the order of the columns here is the order that they are going to appear in when you download your report. Now the next option once you've set this up is to set up indefinite information. Indefinite information just pulls everything that matches what you've selected here based on the source. So a common example I like to give is form responses. If you have a submission source and you select form responses, it's going to pull in all application form responses. If I had selected a rankings report, I've told the system I care about the reviewing ranking forms, not the submission forms. And therefore, if I selected form responses in a ranking report, so the source is rankings, it will give me all of the reviewing form responses instead. So this is really here just in case you did want all of that information. Commonly for applicant side, task completion is a favorite, and it's just to add those in without you having to select every single one. And it does just tack it on to the end of the specifically selected fields of your report. The next options you have are filters, and this is so you can filter for a specific subset of submissions. So whether you want to look at commonly your basic filters looking at the status of active, and if you have multiple user groups or multiple awards wanting to look at submissions for a specific one. You can come in here and you can see currently in stage, assigned to a team. And again, basic filters is really where a lot of the key things you will be filtering by exist. So you can find eligibility status, categories, groups, apply to awards. So that's all here. And you can create any filter you need to get your specific subset. You also have access to task completion as filters and reviewing form responses as filters as well. So this area should be very familiar to you from the Manage Users section, where you can filter in your Manage Applicants area as well by most of the same data here. And I'm just going to be leaving it as filtering for active submissions. Below that, you'll always have some extra options. So the first is whether or not you want to show a header containing the report title and description. So just what I've set up here. The next is splitting checkboxes. Now, since checkbox questions are multi-select, you have the option of splitting them up or not. If you split them up, instead of having one column for a checkbox question, it's actually going to create a column for each potential response to a checkbox question. So if I had 4 options, I now have 4 columns for that one checkbox, and each title of the column would actually be an option that could be selected for that question, and I'll see a count in it. If you deselect that, instead it's going to put it back down into being one column option, and it's just going to give you a comma separated list on what was selected. Now, force numerical value is just to automatically force things into numeric values in Microsoft Excel so you can manipulate them. Ungrouping data is really here for when we're dealing with ranking reports, so I'll discuss that when we go through ranking options. And MS Access is just if you do need to have compatibility. Again, here we are doing a Excel report, so we don't need to worry about that. The final 2 options you have with a basic report is distribution options. And here you can choose to either share this report via a URL, or you can even have daily reports sent. With a URL, it's a matter of creating what you want the URL to be. So I'm just going to say basic report. And you can even set a password on it. The idea here is that now I can copy this line and I can simply share this URL with anyone else who needs to be able to download and access this report. If you set a password on it, just make sure you send them the password, as they'll be required to input that before the download will start. Once they have this URL, they can simply click on it or insert it in the URL bar here, and it's automatically going to start a download and regeneration of this specific report. Again, if you've set an access code, they'll have to put that in just before it will actually download. The next option is daily reports. If you select this, you'll see it automatically puts in your user email address. So in this case, that's my email address for myself. And you can actually just add in a new email per line. And what it'll do is it'll send an email on a daily basis to anyone you have in here, letting them know that a new version of the report is ready and giving them a link to click to go in and regenerate and download that report as well. So these are just 2 extra distribution options. And once you've created the report, you can either save your changes or you can choose to save and download. So I'm just going to quickly click on this to save and download it so that I can show you how this works. And it looks like it's already good to go. So now I'm going to click and it's already starting to open for me. And I'm just going to show you what this looks like. So I've just downloaded a basic report and you'll see my title appears in the top because I said I wanted a header. And then I have all my submission information and the columns I selected appearing across here. And these are the URLs. So now if I want to download this uploaded document, I can copy that URL and I can simply paste that URL in here and it'll automatically, that file was deleted. If it wasn't a deleted file, it would automatically start that download. And now I'm just going to press back to get back to my report itself. One final thing when it comes to reports, in the top you do have a handful of toggle buttons. The first is to download, and you can choose to download or regenerate and download. So regeneration will just update the report to make sure it pulls in anything new that matches the criteria. You can delete a report. You can duplicate it. Now the duplicate option is there as a time saver. If you have 2 reports you need to create that use most of the same fields, instead of having to create your second one from scratch and reselect everything, you can duplicate it and then make changes. And then there's the toggle to just go back to the primary report page. So this covers the basics of pulling a basic submission source report.